folks, it's Yannick Gwizdala. It's the Yannick Gwizdala podcast. We've been missing in action the past couple of weeks. It has been insane. It's the week that almost killed me, at least killed my brain. And we have a ton to get into, not least of all, what I think is the secret. I don't know whether it's so much of a secret. It's at least my take on what the perfect bass sound is, or how to get the best bass sound possible. There is perhaps no such thing as perfection, of course. Pretty sure we all know that at this point, even though some of us refuse to admit it. And if you're anything like me, you're still striving for it every day. But there is no such thing as perfection. Please excuse me while I do a little adjustment here. It's going to screw me over in the mix, but that's a little more presence on the microphone. And I think maybe once we get down to the nitty gritty here, what you hear me say may not be what you're expecting, especially based on what I imagine is a thumbnail I've used full of pedals. And yeah, there's probably no getting away from certain toys, certain things we all know and love, or perhaps pine after, yearn after in the gear department. We've got a ton of them on the desk here to share with you, things that I do use, things that I do consider to be part of that perfect sound, of that ideal setup for bass. And I'm going to be talking more so about recording, but we will in this episode, but we will make reference to live sound. Before we do that, before we get into recording and live sound, bass sound, all that kind of stuff, I must let you know, part of the reason this week almost killed me is because it was time to ship out all of the physical copies of the new book, the bassist's book of scales and arpeggios. They all arrived. Hundreds and hundreds, almost 800 of them arrived here. And of course, I was on the road with Mike Stern when they arrived. Of course, they had to show up early, and Chelsea got hosed with having to unload them from the UPS on her own. And it was, I think, 64, 70 boxes or something. Apparently, the UPS guy told her that he had never seen an entire UPS truck designated to one house before. I find that hard to believe, but apparently that's how big the delivery was. I'm going to do a whole video on that whole thing. I took tons of video and photos and all kinds of stuff just to show you the magnitude of it all. It was insane. Hopefully by the time you're hearing this, a lot of you will have gotten yours. Of course, they take different times to get around different parts of the world, but it's amazing. They're all out there. Everyone except, and Brett, you are getting an email about this, probably maybe even before you hear this, potentially on the podcast. But one person out of that 800 people that pre-ordered these got totally hosed. And Brett down in Australia ordered a bunch of books, and one of them was my bassist guide to altered chords and scales. And Amazon sort of hosed me on the delivery time, and I am still waiting for them. They were a month late. So what I did was I just went and ordered the book full price at Amazon. It gets here in a couple of days. And Brett, if you're listening, you should have gotten an email about that by now, but very sorry. And we got you one specially because we're still waiting for our stock here, and your order will be out soon. Jump in the comments if you got the book already. I want to hear feedback about it. I'm psyched about that. I've heard some really positive things so far. I know people are like, wow, this is a lot of information. Where do I start? First and foremost, it's a reference manual. Don't forget that. And I am going to make a bunch of videos of suggestions of how to use it in 2025 on the channel. So stick around for that. And here we're winding down the end of 2024. We're doing a little holiday sale. I've been trying to figure out how to facilitate this for years, how to get you a physical book bundled with a digital book. So I think most of the books are $25. The physical books on the site. If you buy a physical book, you can go and add any, not just the same one, you can go and add any digital copy of that book for just $5. So all in for $30, you're getting the physical signed copy mailed from here, plus a digital version of that book or of any other book on our site. I know a lot of you may already have a book and it doesn't make sense to buy a physical one and get the same one because perhaps you already have that digitally. So we're extending that to any digital book on the entire site. You can get, it's basically an 80% discount. That's the way we managed to do it, was through a discount. But it's essentially, you buy a signed physical copy, You get the digital version as well for just $5 more. So I think it's $30 all in. Signed copy, digital version. That's it. That's our holiday sale going on right now. We also have a bunch of these live at the 55 bar things. We're going to talk about a bunch of the albums in my discography as we talk about bass tone and how I got them and what I used. So as I was thinking about that, I was like, oh, we actually have some physical copies of Live at the 55 bar. They're shipping worldwide. They're in the store. Everything's linked below. Now let's get to sound. What is the perfect sound? How do you get that elusive, great bass tone that you love in your heroes? Sitting here surrounded by a bunch of toys, and I'm going to share them with you. But I think the most important thing, I guess the absolute most important thing of how to have a great sound is there's no way around it. It's time spent with the instrument. It's right here. It's in the fingers. It's your natural tone before you get to anything, before you even plug a chord into the instrument and get that thing amplified or mic'd up. It's the amount of time you spend with the instrument. It's the thickness of the calluses on your picking hand. It's the way you articulate notes. It's not an easy answer. There is no one-stop shop of, oh, just get this one thing and you'll sound amazing. It really is the amount of time you spend with the instrument. And in my case, we're talking decades now. And in the case of, everyone that I idolize, we're talking, the Will Lees, the Lee Sklars, the Pino Palladinos. We're talking about decade after decade after decade of organic tone production, regardless of instrument, of amp, of DI, of pedal, preamp, whatever it is, compressor, regardless of any of that. If you just got really close to the strings of any of those musicians that I just mentioned, you'd hear a pretty beautiful tone. So I guess that's the overall answer to the question. That's not the easiest one to get to, and I don't think it's the only answer. And it's what I've discovered over the course of my career, is that there are so many other factors. One of them, of course, are the toys. It's do you have my Teletronics TDI, for instance? What DI do you use? What preamp do you use? Is it the Miura K3? Is it some unobtainium stuff that isn't really made anymore? Do you have a compressor in the mix? This BC1 from Caveman Audio, it's like a master compressor, really thinking more outboard gear, but it's in pedal form. Do you have the big the big boy, the BP1? It's like a 1073 basically. That's another Caveman Audio pedal. I should say I've used all of the pedals I'm showing you here so far. I've used them all on recording sessions. This little guy, like the little baby sister of the BP1, this is the BP1 Compact, same kind of thing. I talked to Steen about this not that long ago, and he said he does feel there's a slight difference in sound between the two. But he's way more qualified to hear that than I am. I personally couldn't tell. And another important thing when thinking about any of this gear is also the feel. What's the feedback into the fingers? How does that affect your note choice and your sound production and how hard you play with the instrument? That's like the next layer after that organic tone production, the years spent with the instrument. It's like, how do any of these devices make you feel? I've got the bass rig from Origin Effects here, the Super Vintage, something I featured in a DI shootout that I did a few months ago. Definitely worth checking out if you want to learn a little bit more about that side of things, about the DI, specifically the DI preamp side of things. And then, of course, there are things like the HX Stomp, which is always on my pedal board, no matter what, no matter how small or how big it is. There's always one, sometimes two even, on the bigger boards. And HX Stomp got almost limitless amount of possibilities in there when it comes to making sounds. For my live setup, if we're going to make a differentiation between live and studio, I have the JHS Color Box on my pedal board. I've just spent a week with Mike Stern here on the West Coast with Dennis Chambers, Laney Stern, Bob Franceschini. Was, obviously just an insane amount of fun. All those people are my heroes. It never gets old playing that music, but it rebooted a partition of my brain and of my tone production facility that is very specific to that music, and dialed me into sort of playing with the big boys on the big stage, and how I fit into that mix and how I best support what's going on around me. So that was more of a live thing, obviously, and the JHS Color Box was amazing. I did set it up slightly differently. We played gigs here in Los Angeles. We played up in San Francisco. I did set the EQ slightly differently for each room, which was really interesting. Very easy to do. It's a 3-band EQ, not that complicated. But also the gain staging as well. I was getting more used to messing with the gain staging and making it work to my advantage, and giving myself a more comfortable situation to play from. What I didn't use, but I have one just as another example of something a little bit unobtainium, because I don't think they make these anymore, but the Miura M2, something I've used on and off for many, many years now, for a decade or more, compressor. So there are lots of options, whether it's your preamp, your DI, your compressor, EQ, so many different options in terms of manipulating your sound. But what's making me think of studio sound specifically, and I think this may be the best advice I can give you. We can talk, and as I have talked ad infinitum about pedals on this channel, and I'm always trying new things, and I get thrown stuff here and there, and I'm very happy to share it with you. And as I hope you know by now, I always give you a very honest opinion of it all, and show you, what I'm using, what I'm not. Yeah, it's not difficult to hide. You guys see my pedal board all over the world in videos and stuff, and on the internet. You know exactly what I'm using. The reason I'm thinking about that right now is the best piece of advice I can probably give you, and the one I am thinking about most currently, and I'll tell you why in a second, is who you work with, and who, specifically to recording, who records your sound, who mixes your sound, and who masters your sound. Now, I'm going to look at it very much from an artist standpoint today, because we're really talking about you and your unique voice. I know not everyone aspires to be an artist and write music and record solo albums, but that's what I've done for many years. I think I've put out 17 right now. Maybe we're about to put out number 18. What number 18 is, or whatever the number is, the latest one that's about to come out literally next week is the 20th anniversary of my first album. We're remixing and remastering it, and I elected to recut the bass on most of the record. I'm going to play you a couple of examples, because I have some roughs now from my engineer who's working on this one. He worked on the original mix of this album 20 years ago as well, and we've worked on, it's so many projects and albums and recording sessions and things that we worked to death on that never even came out or saw the light of day. We've been in the studio, in the trenches together for over 2 decades, working on some of my albums, but a lot with other people. His name's Juan Pablo Alcarro, and we're going to look at a couple of things I've done with him over the years. And of course, I've done a lot of work with John Davis at the Bunker in New York. Many albums with John, and they both, like John and Juan Pablo, they're the two people I've worked with the most for my own music. There are some other exceptions that we'll talk a little bit about as well, get some mentions here, but those are the two guys that have worked the most in terms of recording and mixing my music. Then there have been some different mastering engineers, Alex DeTurk, Nathan James, Scott Hull, like a few people that have worked on my records in terms of the mastering, and Juan Pablo has been doing the mixing and mastering most recently. So yeah, and I've just literally got some rough mix. These aren't final, but they're kind of the exploratory phase of the process when I'm working on any project with anyone. Right now, it's like, oh, do you like where this is going? Can we decide on a direction? What is our goal here? How do we want the bass to sound, for instance? Not only that, how do we want the kick drum? How do we want the horns to be spread? I'm asking questions about the guitar being in stereo and what we can do with it to widen the mix a little bit. And also to make it worthwhile doing this project, remixing and remastering, even re-recording some bass, how do we bring more value and a different experience to the listener that wasn't there the first time around? and how do we improve upon that? Of course, technology has come a long way since then, so there are certain things we simply couldn't do then that perhaps we can now. Some files that we find that we missed maybe, and some added things that weren't there in the first place. Some cool stuff, I think. At the end of the day, it was definitely a discussion we made, like, is this even worth doing? And then when we drilled down into it, we're like, oh yeah, we could actually do some cool stuff here. So let's get to some music. I'm going to play you track 6, PK, from the original from 2004, just the opening here, and we're going to kind of A-B back and forth between the old bass. Where is it? Let me get right from the downbeat. This is the old bass. I believe that was the Wall, and this is the new bass. This is the Matheson, still not mastered. But just a little wider, a little warmer, definitely 20 more years of experience in the fingers. And hopefully this speak, like, I'm not doing anything crazy different. There are a couple of things I use. Pedals, maybe the pedals are a little nicer now than they were back then. I have access to more stuff than I did back then. So there are those minor differences. But the real difference is just the amount of time. Like I said before, probably the most important thing of all is the amount of time since 2004 that I've gotten to spend with the instrument, and how different I'm able to play. In my opinion, how much better I'm able to play with the most basic elements. Let us, what was something that, oh yes, circles. We just started working on that. Let me play the original, which is here. So you get an idea of what the bass is doing there and where the mix is. This is... Again, just a little wider to me. And if we bump ahead a little bit, I'm dropping in. I think I was using, I used a few different octave pedals on when I was recutting the bass, and that sounds to me like the vintage bass octave, the MXR. Let me get behind the guitar side. Sounds like the vintage bass octave. Just feels like I'm able to support the rest of the music so much better. I think that's the overwhelming sense I've had going through this process, getting to play that music with those musicians again 20 years later, having really not played it at all, like rarely even played any of these tunes actually over the last 20 years. The sessions to me were lost. I had no idea where they were, and I went on a mad sort of dumpster dive through old hard drives. Finally was able to hook up where is it? Oh, this thing. I was finally able to take a drive apart, a really old one, that literally from the sessions, and then it was all broken. Like the housing was messed up and the power wasn't working, and I bought this little, I don't know what this is, a little adapter or something, managed to get it going, grabbed all the information off it, and amazingly the sessions opened in Logic. So yeah, there are some things I think. Oh, what about this? Right. get a little flavor of that. And then that's the old one. This is the new one. So right away, the confidence to play open notes rather than palm muted is the thing that stands out to me. I remember being on the session and feeling like, oh man, I don't really get the punch or the wide sound unless I'm playing palm muted with the thumb. And now I'm able to play with, obviously, with a much higher action. 20 years ago was like the Rizla action, the cigarette paper action that you just couldn't fit, and there was no space between the strings and the fretboard. So very, very little range, dynamic range in that sense. Now I'm playing with the huge action, and I feel like I have that confidence, like I'm playing here, just open, no palm muting. If we go back 20 years, and as I listen to it, I don't think, oh, that sucks or that's bad. I think absolutely it stands up as a performance. The moment was captured very well. For instance, my first album had 3 different people in the engineer department. There was Albert Loisink, who recorded the sessions. And then there was Juan Pablo Alcaro, who mixed it. And then Nathan James mastered it over at the Hit Factory. And it was actually the last album to ever get mastered at the Hit Factory in New York before it closed. Maybe I've told that story before, I don't know. But it was, I remember that very vividly because we rehearsed for like a few hours on Wednesday. We cut the album the next day on Thursday. We did the whole thing obviously live in one take. That was the whole thing with the studio audience. We took, I can't remember whether we took the Friday or the Saturday off. I think we mixed it on Friday. So it was rehearsal, cut, mix, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We took Saturday off to listen to the mixes just to make sure everything was caught. And then Sunday, went to the Hit Factory and hung with Nathan James for the mastering session in the afternoon. And whatever record Dream Theater were making in 2004 was, I think they were the last album to be made there. They had it locked out. They had Studio A and B or something, because like there was a writing room, plus they were cutting the record in a bigger room. They had wardrobe cases lining the halls. It was crazy. But it was me in the mastering suite and Dream Theater in the main studio. I think we were the last people in there before the studio closed and became luxury condos, and I think a Baldwin piano showroom for a while, I think. Anyway, I have very fond memories of the whole process. And as I listen back to the performance, I'm not like repulsed by it, but I am encouraged when I listen to the newer part, to the newer sound. And bear in mind, it isn't even finished yet. We're in the final stages, but it isn't even tightened up to be like final mix and master. So maybe there's even a little more to be squeezed out of it, which is crazy to think. But just listening to the performance now, which I did, a couple of weeks ago, it feels like a much more mature set of choices in terms of notes and articulation and rhythm and everything. And then I'm not sure about this sound I used with the F Emeron. I switched from the clean sound of the bass to the F Emeron at some point. Where is that? Here we go. 1, 2. So I'm kind of undecided on that sound right now. So these are the kind of questions I'm asking myself, and I'm going back and forth with Juan Pablo, working on that stuff. I'd love to get into the whole thing with you guys, but that's probably for a different video. Maybe we'll do an A/B and a listen through or something when the album comes out. It will come out in 2024. That's the goal. The first one in 2004, the anniversary one in 2024. So we're working our asses off through the holidays here to get it finished. Like I've said before, it will be the first thing I press on vinyl of my own. So I'm psyched about that. There will be a pre-sale on the vinyl as soon as possible. As soon as we have it all sorted and the artwork and everything finished, I'll announce that very soon. I know a lot of people have been asking about vinyl. There are a couple of things about that are really specific as well. Will be the order. Obviously, I can't fit all of that music on there. How much music is there? Does it even say on Spotify? It doesn't tell me, but it's definitely more than will fit on a single vinyl. So there'll be a couple of songs that don't make it, maybe 2 or 3 songs that don't make it on the vinyl, but we are going to do a full digital release as well. So you'll get to hear all the music, even if all of it can't be on one vinyl. Double vinyl's a little bit ambitious for first time, I think, unless you want to get in the comments and change my mind right now and you want the whole thing plus bonus tracks on a double vinyl. I don't know. You tell me. It's going to be a little pricey to do, I think, but I guess it's an option. So yeah, we can't go through that entire thing. I did mention earlier on that I have some CDs of Live at the 55 Bar. That was my second album. There wasn't really an engineer on that. I mean, Scott, pressed record each night and set the 2 microphones up, but it was such a minimalist setup that it was just recorded like live to 2-track, live to hard disk, basically. In this, I forget what the make or model of that thing was, but I think it sounded really good. And it was that room, it was one of the things about the 55 bar that made it so special was the natural compression of that low ceiling and the way we set up. It was always amazing. Like if you went in there to see someone, it was their first time playing, they had no idea about how to set the stuff up. You could always tell who was a rookie or who wasn't by where they put the drums and the bass amp. And those of us who were fortunate to play literally hundreds upon hundreds of shows in there over the years really dialed it in, and I got to capture it one night back in 2007. I wonder what I should play, because there's obviously a live album, Actually, yeah, there's some good Tim Miller moments on here. But that's freaking 2 microphones hanging from the ceiling, and you can, to my ear, you can really hear everything. It's obviously a live album, but I can hear the bass, I can hear the kick drum, I can hear the guitar. It's like crazy well balanced for a live album. That is in my discography, at least, as I just have iTunes open here, and not iTunes, Spotify open here in chronological order going through my albums. That one is, basically basic. I mean, I think we hit the button that said mastering on the machine the next day, and that's what mastered the album. So maybe we could squeeze some more juice out of that in a few years as an anniversary option to do a remaster and brighten a few things up here and there. Who knows? We get to, in 2010, the first record I did with John Davis, The Space in Between. Big sound, that's JoJo on there again. And, the whole album had a vibe. We went for something, I think we were aiming for something, and we got where we wanted to go. I was so happy with that. And it had to piece a few things together, because there was a big basic tracking day with me and JoJo and Tim Miller and Mike Stern playing live. But then there were other things added as well, with Ayeto Moreira, with Doug Womble, with James Valentine, with Bob. Did I say Bob Reynolds? With Bob Reynolds, with Odin Varga. Like there were things added to that. So that was a much bigger project to take on, took more time, was kind of spread out all over the place. But John sort of brought everything, all those pieces into focus to make the whole thing sound like a record. So that's also something I'm going for with bass sound, even though there are a lot of different kinds of performances on there, like this, for instance. Really kind of pulled everything together sonically with the bass. So it just speaks again, as will pretty much everything I look at here. And we'll talk about some specifics as well, kind of things I remember using on those sessions, which obviously contributed, but it's almost always the overall vision of the engineer and the artist or the bass player. And of course, if you're on someone else's session, it's not always applicable or possible, or you're probably gonna get fired if you go in the control room and say, well, I need this and I need that. My vision for this song is, if it's not your song and if it's not your session. So there is the element of being able to show up as a sideman, as a freelance musician, and be able to create an amazing bass sound. I think that's what makes, obviously, Lee Sklar and Will Lee and Anthony Jackson and Nathan East and Neil Stubenhouse and Sean Hurley and Chris Chaney and Bob Glaub and all these legends of the electric bass and of the studio. That's what makes all of these players so special, is that they can show up, and regardless, like in spite of sometimes, not that they probably rarely work with terrible engineers or in bad situations, but no matter who is behind the console, they can still show up and deliver that great sound. And sometimes that will come down to choice of equipment and consistency of setup and stuff you're used to playing. I think it's more so about being used to playing it and having the confidence in being able to create consistent sound than it is in the specific piece of gear. Because I'm sure you could ask Will and Lee and Pino and all those players, Carol Kay and whoever it is, the legendary studio players, you could ask them all, like, hey, what are you using? They'd probably all tell you something different, yet they all make an incredible sound. So again, I think that speaks to the individual confidence and consistency of the player. So it's very important to bear that in mind when we're talking about this. It's not just about being an artist and being a composer and making solo records. There are many angles of attack in terms of creating the result. But for me, and as we listen to this stuff, it's really been about that vision with the engineer, vision with, I didn't get to, we'll get to that, because I didn't get a producer on a record for the first time on my own until 2019. And then it was John Patitucci. So it was like, holy crap, there's someone who really understands the bigger picture. Not only as a bass player, but as a composer and producer and everything, basically, arranger. So to have someone like that in the control room with John Davis, John Davis was engineering that record. But anyway, we'll get to that in a little while. Also, I casually think that album generated my most streamed track on Spotify, so that's something to look forward to. 2011, no engineer, because that was just a live record bootleg. It only happens once in 2012. John Davis, that was at the New Bunker. We were at the Space in Between in 2010 was at the old bunker in the basement, and 2012 was early days of the New Bunker, Studio A, big project. We're talking about Mark Juliana, Jojo Mayer, John Ellis, Justin Vasquez, Dan Axtell, and Tim Miller. It was, 2 days of straight up improvising. Let me play you some sounds here. I was like so deep into the meat box then, I think. What did I play? Yeah. I think that's the meat box. Yeah. But again, another thing that's I think is important, especially as an artist or composer or producer, as most of my albums are self-produced, is to have a vision for the sound of the other instruments around you as well, because that is going to affect where the bass sits in the mix. Like, what is the vision? How do you want the drums to sound? We were going very specifically on that record for that size room sound that you can hear. On this track is Mark Juliana. So when it's like a real drum part, like a band part, and we're not like, John's not getting crazy with the, space echo or anything like that, it sounds like that room. And if we go for this one with JoJo, same room. And of course, they're different drummers. They have different sounds, different cymbals, the whole bit, different tuning, different drum sets. But to me, there's some cohesiveness with the sound of two drummers in the same studio being engineered and mixed by the same person. And there are definitely elements of, John, I think, recorded every record we worked on, me and John Davis worked on, I think he recorded and mixed. And then I think we had a bunch of different mastering engineers on those. And so on those sessions, I was looking at, what was I using so much? I didn't really have a preamp or anything like that in pedal form on the board. I was definitely relying on John in the control room to put me through whatever beautiful outboard gear he had. In terms of the gear I was using, there were a lot of pedals on that session. It was all improvised. It was all quite electronic. We got into some crazy sounds on those sessions. A lot of OC2, a lot of Meatbox, some PN2, the tremolo stereo pan from Boss. I know I was using the exotic BB bass preamp for Fuzz, all kinds of crazy stuff. Fast forward to a year later when we did Theatre by the Sea, which is where Nas comes from. And that's the same rhythm section on the entire record. That's Peter Erskine, myself, and Alan Pasqua, and then a ton of guests: Mike Stern, Bob Franceschini, Lizzie Loeb, who you heard singing right there, Sergio Vayin from the band Mana, Elliot Mason, Randy Brecker is on there as well. Yeah, that was like Track the Rhythm section on the West Coast. Used Ty Longley, my good friend here, great engineer in LA. He came over to Erskine's studio. We tracked it at Peter's place. Ty recorded the whole thing, and then we went to New York to do all the overdubs, which John Davis engineered, and John mixed the record also. So we had like 2 big tracking days. I actually booked 2 days to track the rhythm section, and we did it in 4 hours. Those guys like Peter and Alan were just insanely quick and knew all the music ahead of time, which was great. And then I had a day in the studio of basically just all my friends being there, tracking all the overdubs, the horns and the vocals and all that stuff, and came out with a really and Nir Felder's on this record, of course. I'm wondering who's playing guitar there. That's Nir Felder playing the acoustic and Mike Stern playing the electric. Lizzie singing. And we came out with some things that really sounded like songs. And again, a cohesive sound throughout. That's what John was great at doing, was like threading the sound of the record. And, again, it just... incredible to work with someone who understands the bass that much as well. That's a very fortunate collaboration. It's one we're going to revisit again as well in the not too distant future. I think in 2025, I've been itching to do a trio record at the Bunker, maybe with Ben Wendell and Cliff Allman. I don't know. I'm thinking. I have like little blue Post-its off to the side here, and I have like a bunch of names of people I love, and I'm just trying to pick combinations to put together. So yeah, there's so many things going on for next year. But yeah, again, the choice of engineer, the choice of studio, such a huge part of what makes a great bass sound. Motion Picture 2014. Let's get some bass sounds here. have not listened to this in a very long time. And this is basically all trio, Nir Felder and Gary Husband, but on Beechwood Canyon and maybe Motion Picture. There are a couple of tracks that I got Jeff Babko on back in LA. We did some overdubs at Jeff's studio. Oh yeah, there's Jeff playing Rhodes. Oh, and Jeff doubling my bass line as well. I always thought this would be a fun one to do a big band arrangement of, and that's something that's on my mind for the future. I don't know how quickly I'll be able to get that together, but I would like to do kind of a large ensemble arrangement of a bunch of tunes from these albums. Be really fun. Probably I'd be more interested in writing new music more, but there are some tunes like that. I think, that'd be kind of cool with a large sound. And I will tell you that I remember very vividly, this was early doors of owning the Noble, the insane tube bass preamp from Jack Roan. I have serial number, whatever it is, single digit serial number 897, something like that. And I remember vividly taking it to the studio and using this as my DI and feeling great amount of confidence to play stuff like this for the first time, really using something tubey, in a, not necessarily a pedal form, obviously, but something that wasn't in the control room as a piece of outboard gear patched into the channel strip. And I guess we haven't talked at all about the actual basses that I was playing on these records. I played the Wall on Mystery to Me, and then space in between was Federa, live in Barcelona, 2011 Federa, It Only Happens Once, was a few different instruments. Believe I had the Fender Music Master by that time, because I'd played that in 2011 on Bob's Somewhere in Between records. So I had the Fender Music Master, had the Federa, and I also used John Davis's jazz bass on a couple of things, I want to say as well. Theater by the Sea was almost all Federa, but I believe I retracked this song on John's Fender bass. Don't remember, but something I remember like that. Motion Picture was all the Federa. Then we get into this Snow God record that I went to Sweden to Morgan Agron's house. He had a studio in his backyard and a little hut, and me and Alex Gunyer and Morgan went in there, and I'm not sure what we were thinking, but we got some stuff out of it. It's actually, sonically speaking, one of the albums I'm maybe most proud of. Because it was really different. It was all improvised. Morgan had this crazy one-string bass that I played on some of it. I remember I played a lot of Meatbox FX32, which was super fun. And, Alex was doing some programming as well as playing guitar. And, Morgan just hit record. It was really, is using the term engineered very loosely. It was just the three of us playing and playing into Pro Tools. And then John Davis mixed that one. That was 2015, and you can see it's like, I think there's a theme's gonna run throughout my entire career while I'm alive, at least anyway. That when I listen back to stuff, which I never do, but when I think, oh, I'm kind of proud of that. Like I was excited about the sound we got in that moment, or I'm just excited or have good memories about the feeling of making that music. It's always the stuff that has the least amount of exposure, the least amount of plays. That's not a complaint, just an observation. But when I listen to like that track Fortress, for instance, there's some stuff in there that I think is super hip, and it's had 1,748 plays, and it's been out for a decade. So 170 plays a year is not exactly doing it. What's that, like 15 spins a month or something? But less than one a day. It's like one play every 2 days. I think that works out at something. It's not exactly running up the charts. Oh, and I tell a lie, I found the song. It's not Light Years from The Union. It's actually Manhattan Part 2. I think this actually got put in this is really weird, in like a massage therapist's playlist or something, in this one track from 2016 has 193,000 plays on Spotify for actually no real reason as far as I'm concerned, other than I guess people want to get a massage while listening to it. But yeah, we get to American Elm. First time I made a completely solo album I recorded it in the back end of 2015, and it came out in 2016. We recorded it at my buddy James Valentine's house. He acted as, quote unquote engineer. I think he would be the first person to tell you that he was pressing record and just tolerating listening to me play solo in the other room for hours. And then my buddy Jeff Rothschild mixed / mastered that over at Henson, which was fun because we'd worked together in very much a sports, nutrition, scientific capacity, and not in music. And I've got to bring him out of retirement from that to go mix and master that record. So that was awesome that we got to work on an album together. That was 2016. It's weird. That's had some of the most plays of any of my records, and it's one that I think I least think about. Actually, it's never really on my radar. John and I got to record together. John Davis and I got to record together in 2017. We made the bass duo album. Him playing upright, me playing electric. And again, there are some, I think, really beautiful moments, like that waltz in D flat, for instance. I rarely ever play, but I think it's a cool tune, and I should start trying to play it a little more live. It's had basically no views, no spins, whatever. A couple of thousand, not even on most of those tracks. That's from 2017, and we did that live to 2 track, I want to say. We did that live to tape, and then maybe that's the record that got mastered by Scott Hull, who did like Steely Dan and a bunch of things. I actually don't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, in terms of the bass sound, that was really straight up. I think I was using the Noble on that, played with an amp in the room, and that was basically it. Really simple. We cut that record in maybe 35 minutes. Crazy. Really, really quick. 2018, I put out an album of the Last Minute World Tour from 2017. A lot of tracks there. It was like a triple album. Tons and tons and tons of tracks, but that's just from the Noble and from some ambient mics, really no engineer at all. Then we get to 2019, which is The Union. Again, John Davis, John Patitucci producing this time, and Light Years, this song got the most amount of play. It's the only track without the trumpet, and it's something that really, I got the confidence from John, actually. I didn't really realize it at the time, but as I thought about it afterwards, it made so much sense that, that John Patitucci was one of those people who played melodies on the bass. And I've never felt great about that. I've never felt great about playing melodies on the bass. I've always liked and preferred to write them for other people. And Patitucci was a huge influence in that sense, and sort of made it okay, sort of, blazed the trail of like, yeah, this is cool, man. It's like music is music. Don't get hung up on the orchestration so much. And if you can express yourself the best with the bass in the higher register, don't pay any attention to people who tell you that isn't right, because it's totally fine. And he was the one who suggested that on the session. It was one of his producer moments, and we was like, yeah, we'll just we'll track the song, and then go back and play the melody, and go back and play the solo over the top as well. I think maybe we did 2 or 3 takes of the solo, and the melody came together in one. I don't think we did much more than that, but we weren't getting it with the trumpet. The melody just wasn't written with that in mind, and it wasn't like Phil couldn't play it. Of course, he can play the shit out of it, but it wasn't the way I was hearing it, and that was a really important element of the song to me. So we found the fix, or John found the fix, And there were a couple of things where in this tune, it's called Your Secret Lover, track 8 on the record. Phil was late for the session, so me and Clarence ended up just tracking this duo. Here I'm using the delay still before I switch to reverb. It's funny. Anyway, I'd really wanted to squeeze this, like I said, in D minor. I'd really wanted to squeeze this bridge in D major into that. And John was like, well, maybe the D major thing, maybe the minor thing is fine on its own, and the D major thing is just a whole other thing. And I think, is it this? Yeah. We took the melody that I'd written for that bridge and those chords and everything and made it into something rubato, and this is what opens the album. So John sort of disconnected the two things and made them into separate moments, and I thought it ended up being a great way to open the record. That's where Phil is really shining, like his melodic sensibility, his articulation and sound, just amazing. So yeah, bass on that was more noble, and playing with an amp in the room as well. I believe when I see some pictures back from that, I think I had the Aguilar set up with the Noble on top. That was has been my bunker sort of signal chain on a lot of those records. So 2019, that marks the last record I did with John Davis. Last time I recorded at the bunker, that was pre-pandemic. Everything sort of fell apart after that. I did a couple of solo things, 20 and 21, just putting out kind of soundscapey things from home, just recording from home. So no engineer there, no mix, no mastering, just me bullshitting my way into it. And then we kind of had the reunion with Juan Pablo in 2022 when we went to Spain to cut One Way Out. And then we got into some different shit, obviously. Different approach for this album. One thing is I've always tried to do something different on every album. That's always been the goal. And sometimes I'm successful, sometimes it just falls flat on its face, and those albums don't see the light of day most of the time. I've put out a couple of clunkers. I'm not going to say which ones they are. You can make up your own mind for yourself. There plenty of people have, trust me. But when we got to Spain 2022, this was like a different kind of chapter, a different approach, a new band, for instance, with Nico Vicaro and Tom Corley, cats I'd been wanting to play with properly, in that situation and write music for a very long time, and finally got the chance to. And we really got to some stuff, and I think as I look back on my own recording career as an artist, yeah, there are moments that stick out that you just like, you look through the control room and there's like John Davis and John Patitucci and my wife as well, who wasn't my wife at the time, but yeah, we were getting close to getting married. So it was just special to look in the control room and see those three people, like really important people in my life in the moment of making music. Like there are a few things like that that really stick out as massive highlights when I think back to my very first recording session and getting up there and counting off the first tune to a control room full of people, friends and great musicians and all the people I wanted to be working with. And I look over and there's Jojo Mayer and there's Mark Turner and Elliot Mason and Gretchen and all these people. There are definitely highlights like that stick out. And I would have to put One Way Out in 2022 as one of those, top 3 moments in the studio in my life, because of what we were able to get to and how we were able to get to it. Bass sound exceptional. I think I found some things that I hadn't found before, and just whenever I'm making progress, it's so huge. It's such an incredible feeling to be finding something new in the instrument and in the music. And because there were basically no constraints, there was one real tune that I took there, like Northern Line, this one, that actually had a form and a melody that we didn't rehearse and we didn't put it together until right before we cut the song. But this is really the only composition that I went in there like, this is something that wants to be on the record. And the way the record ends as well with this piano piece. And it was a good way to close out the documentary as well. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. There's a whole documentary about the making of this. So those were the only 2 things that really were written that ended up on the album. And the rest, there were no constraints, which was really fun. We're just like, we can do whatever we want and go wherever we want, and whatever happens is just going to be great. And then very in the opposite direction of that was going down to Argentina in 2023, just last year. Oh, excuse me. Shit, we've been going almost an hour. That's why my voice is giving out. So very quickly here, we're getting towards the end of the line in terms of my albums and sort of bass experiences. And this one brings up another, not only did I go down there with a ton of music and not particularly easy music to play either. Those were difficult moments in the studio to nail all that stuff. So yeah, it's a completely different approach compositionally from the artist standpoint. Again, that's with Juan Pablo Alcarro. We went down there to his hometown, to Buenos Aires, to make this record. Went down there for a week. It was fantastic. Played a show. Took Cliff Armand and Tom Corley, and just had a blast. Recorded a bunch of stuff. Recorded 11, 12 tracks. Ended up with 10 on the album. And this was the one where I really wanted to have a bass amp in the room. And in hindsight, I'm so glad I didn't. That the bass amp was a hunk of junk from Juan Pablo's brother's office that had been sitting there for years. We dragged it to the studio, turned it on, and it didn't work. So I did the whole album on in-ears, or not even in-ears. I didn't have my in-ears with me. I did them on a really shitty pair of headphones. And it ended up being a totally life-changing experience in terms of the honesty of the immediate feedback in the ears, like really present. The thing that I kind of hate, there's no space, and it's very, very present and upfront, but it really made the performance honest and sort of highlighted a few things in my playing that I hadn't heard before, and things I could use as information to build sort of a better picture, a better path forward for the recording. And I think there are moments, is it this? Just finding the note and finding the time, very focused, and the concept was very much piano, bass, and drums, huge room. If you've seen any of the videos from that, the singles that I put out, you'll get to experience the whole sort of what space we were in and playing direct. And yeah, really amazing experience, super fun, very hectic, not easy. Even though that was the longest amount of time. What was it, 4 days? 3 or 4 complete days in the studio. That was the longest I'd ever spent on my own music in the studio. I think it was 4. Crazy, really, really fun. In 2024, we put out a live album from the subsequent tour of Night Watch. Oh, no, actually, that was from the tour of One Way Out, because that was with Nico on drums, Tom Corley on piano and keys, and Juan Pablo mixed and mastered that. So the last 3 I've done with Juan Pablo: One Way Out, Night Watch, and the Live in London, the trio Live in London. And the next one, which is we are working on right now, the 20th anniversary of Mystery to Me from 2004 to 2024. We are finishing that up. That's what I opened this episode with, playing you some examples. That'll be out before the end of the year. It has to be. It has to say 2024 on the release date. That's really important to me, that it is literally 20 years. And there will be, like I said, the pre-sale for the vinyl. So excited about that. Can't wait to share the artwork and all that stuff with you, and the final track listing. Before I go, you guys may or may not have noticed, in the last couple of episodes ago, I mentioned the fact that my Dark World, my beloved Chase Bliss Dark World reverb pedal, got completely shafted on some trip. Was that to Germany? I can't remember. It just got completely beat up in the Pelican case. I sold GFI Systems Specular Tempest. Somebody bought that. I had a couple of pedals for sale, actually. One of them is still for sale, the Hungry Robot. Should probably have mentioned that earlier on. If you made it this far, leave, what emoji are we going to go for this week? Leave the oh man, I'm trying to think of all the emojis. Leave the 8-ball, the billiard ball. Leave the billiard ball emoji. Anyone who leaves a comment with the billiard ball emoji, I will promise I will reply to. And yeah, if you're interested in this, the Hungry Robot Wardenclyffe Deluxe, that was something I bought for some modulation recently. It's brand new. It's in the box. I plugged it in because I was curious about the sound. I dig the sound, but it was just too big. The footprint was too big for my pedal board. So that's brand new in the box. It's available for sale on the website. It's linked below. And to replace the Dark World, I still haven't really tried this out yet, but right before I left with Mike Stern, I got one of these, the Delverb from UA Effects. What a nice build, but it's a delay and reverb in the same pedal. Going to do some research into that with the app and see if I can set it up to make it work. Sounds really good from what I've heard. And I had maybe 3 minutes to plug it in and try it before I left on the road. So definitely not enough information from that yet. But that's it. That is sort of my path through getting a good bass sound. And at the end of the day, it comes down to, obviously the most important thing, spending time with your instrument to learn how to create a sound. But then, as you can see through my career as an artist and through making solo records, it is so much about who you work with and surrounding yourself with the right people, and not being afraid to have those conversations and to say what you want, and also to take criticism and suggestions and advice in return, and to trust those people. There's a reason I hire people like that and have them around me, is because I really trust them. And if I'm going for something and I don't really know how I want to get there or how I can get there, and they have the information, I'm really very happy to listen to it. And if there's something going drastically wrong or I'm screwing up in some way, I'm always open to listen to. Oh shit! Well, we should maybe try it like that. Yeah. Have confidence in the people you hire and in the people you surround yourself with, because it will make your experience a pretty incredible one if you can really assemble the right crew. All right, the voice is gone. We hit the hour mark, more than the hour mark. Wow, that's what I get for missing a week. Okay, cats, that's it. Don't forget to leave the billiard ball emoji in the comments below. Everything else I talked about, the books, the CDs, our holiday sale, everything happening below in the description of the video. I'll see you all very soon.